The cold wind blew across the empty training field. Dust danced around rusted obstacles, and in the center stood a trembling K9 German Shepherd pup. His fur was rough and patchy, his ribs just barely hidden beneath the surface. He tried to move his head, but a sharp pain froze him in place. He winced, softly whimpered, and lowered his ears. A loud whistle echoed through the air, once, twice, but the pup didn't move. He was too scared to trust it. A heavy bootstep crunched the gravel. Then came a voice, deep and mocking. "Is that the reject?" The pup flinched but didn't run. He couldn't. His legs were stiff with fear and betrayal. The screen goes black. A single heartbeat echoes, and then a low, broken growl rises from the silence. Barely a whisper of the courage still hiding inside him. "Take a second. Let us know what corner of the world you're from. Your comment connects hearts across oceans. If this story stirred something in you, like and subscribe, so this ripple of hope can reach even further." Montana's skies stretched wide over fields of frost and pine. The K9 training facility sat at the edge of a forest, hidden behind tall fences and silence. Officer Tyler Briggs, 38, lived in a cabin just down the trail, alone, ever since he lost his wife 2 years ago in a late-night robbery gone wrong. He used to chase criminals. Now he trained rescue dogs. But no matter how many dogs passed through his care, nothing filled the hole in his chest. Tyler believed dogs could save people, just like his wife once said. "They don't lie. They don't leave." But lately, something about the program felt off. Dogs were disappearing from the records. Injuries were blamed on accidents. And too many pups were being labeled unfit without reason. One morning, while checking the storage units for spare supplies, Tyler noticed a foul smell. He followed it to the last unit, the one nobody used anymore. The lock was broken. As he slid the door open, the light hit something small and still in the corner. K9 pup. His body was curled tight, eyes barely open, and fur matted in places with dried blood. The pup trembled as if the air itself hurt. His neck had bruises, and the skin around his collar was raw. Tyler stepped inside slowly, his heart thudding. "Hey, buddy, what happened to you?" The pup didn't bark. He didn't even lift his head. He just blinked, as if unsure whether to trust the kindness in Tyler's voice. Tyler knelt, anger rising in his chest. This was no accident. This was cruelty. Deliberate. Someone had done this and left him here to be forgotten. "I got you now," he whispered, gently placing his jacket over the pup. "You're not staying in this place another night." And just like that, Tyler carried him out, into the open air, into a second chance. But what Tyler didn't know was that saving the pup was only the beginning. Tyler drove with one hand on the wheel and the other gently resting on the tiny pup beside him, wrapped in the soft fleece of his jacket. Every bump in the road made the little German Shepherd flinch. His head would twitch, then shake uncontrollably, like his body had been trained to fear movement. Tyler named him Shadow because of how quietly he moved, how invisible he'd become to everyone else. At home, Tyler set up a soft bed, fresh water, and food. But Shadow didn't touch any of it. He just curled into the corner, eyes wide, shaking, not from cold but from memory. That night, Tyler couldn't sleep. He sat on the floor beside Shadow, flipping through old training reports he'd pulled from the facility's files. One file caught his eye. Unit 17B, deemed unfit. Failed obedience. Unresponsive to commands. Aggressive behavior. Recommend immediate retirement. Tyler looked at the broken pup beside him and clenched his fists. "Unfit," he whispered. "He's not broken. You are." Tyler made it his mission to find out what had really happened. He asked around casually, why was a 6-month-old pup locked away? Why so many bruises? The answers were always the same. He wasn't smart enough for the job. He couldn't learn. He was a danger. But then came the whispered warning from one of the junior trainers. "Captain Ross doesn't like weak dogs. If they mess up even once, they disappear." It all made sense now. Shadow wasn't slow. He was scared. He wasn't dangerous. He was hurt. Repeatedly. beaten for not understanding commands fast enough, mocked for trembling, bullied for being stupid. And when he couldn't perform, they shut him away, hoping he'd fade out of sight. Tyler's chest ached with guilt. He had walked those halls. He'd heard the rumors, and he hadn't looked deeper until now. The next morning, Tyler found Shadow sitting near the door. His head still twitched when he moved, but this time his eyes met Tyler's. A soft, unsure connection. Not quite trust, but maybe the beginning of it. Tyler knelt. "They gave up on you, but I won't." And in that quiet moment, the tiniest flick of Shadow's tail brushed the floor. Something had survived inside him. But as Tyler would soon learn, not everyone wanted that strength to return. Tyler's cabin wasn't big, but it was warm and filled with memories. On the porch slept Ranger, his retired K9 partner. Old, loyal, scarred, and wise. When Tyler brought Shadow home, Ranger lifted his head, sniffed the air, and gave a slow wag. No judgment, just quiet welcome. Shadow, on the other hand, didn't move past the doorway. He stood frozen, one paw half lifted, eyes darting between Tyler and the older dog. Tyler stepped back and left the door open. Hours passed. Then finally, tiny paw steps across the wood floor. Inside. At dinner, Shadow didn't eat until Ranger nudged the bowl closer. Even then, he waited for Ranger to finish first. His way of saying, "I'm not a threat." That night, while Tyler read by the fireplace, Shadow crept over and lay down 3 feet away. Not touching, not quite safe, but closer than before. Days turned into a week. Tyler took both dogs on walks, keeping Shadow on a soft lead. The pup stuck close, never pulling, always watching Tyler's every move like he was learning what it meant to be part of something. One evening, a thunderstorm rolled in. The sky cracked open, and Shadow bolted under the table, shaking violently. Ranger padded over and lay beside him, shoulder to shoulder. Tyler crouched down, gently placing his hand near Shadow. Not touching, just there. "I don't know what they did to you," Tyler said softly, "but you're safe now, I promise." And then, Shadow did something he'd never done before. He placed his head on Tyler's hand. Just for a second. But it was enough to break the silence and something inside Tyler too. This wasn't just an abandoned dog. This was a brave canine learning how to live again. But courage doesn't always grow in peace. Sometimes, it grows when you're forced to protect the one who gave you hope. The skies cleared after days of rain, and Tyler decided it was time for a small hike through the backwoods. A routine path he used to train dogs. He brought Ranger and Shadow along, hoping nature might ease the pup's fear. Shadow walked cautiously, ears alert, staying just a step behind Tyler, always watching. As they moved through the winding trail, Tyler smiled. "You're doing great, buddy." Shadow gave a tiny wag. Progress. But near a rocky slope, Tyler slipped. His foot caught under a root and he fell hard, slamming his head on a rock. The world spun, then went black. Shadow froze. Ranger barked and rushed forward, sniffing and pawing at Tyler's side. But Tyler didn't move. Blood trickled from his forehead. Shadow's eyes widened. He whimpered once. Then again. He paced in circles. His head twitched painfully when he looked up the trail, but he didn't stop. He nudged Ranger aside, then turned and sprinted back down the path, legs flying faster than ever. Barking. Loud. Sharper. Desperate. Miles away at the main facility gate, 2 young trainees were packing up for the day. Then they heard it, an urgent bark growing closer. They turned to see Shadow racing toward them, panting, eyes locked on them with pure determination. "What's he doing out alone?" one of them asked. Shadow stopped, barked again, turned, ran a few steps back toward the forest, then barked once more, almost pleading. "Follow him," the other said. The moment they entered the woods, Shadow began leading them, pausing at forks, looking back to make sure they followed, then continuing. It wasn't random. It was guided. 10 minutes later, they found Tyler, unconscious but alive, Ranger standing guard. Paramedics rushed in. As Tyler was lifted onto a stretcher, One of the trainees asked, "Who trained that dog? That was smart." The other replied, "Wasn't he the one they called stupid?" Shadow sat nearby, panting, shaking, but his eyes never left Tyler. For the first time in his short, battered life, someone had seen what he was truly capable of. But just when it seemed hope had returned, darkness was already moving in the shadows. The hospital room was quiet, lit only by the soft glow of a bedside lamp. Tyler lay on the bed, his head wrapped in white gauze. Machines beeped slowly beside him. Shadow lay curled on the floor beneath the window, watching every breath Tyler took. He hadn't moved from that spot all night. Nurses had tried to lead him out, but he wouldn't go. Ranger rested near the door, keeping silent guard. Hours passed. Then Tyler stirred. His eyes blinked open, dazed. He looked around, disoriented, until his gaze landed on the small brown eyes watching from the floor. Shadow stood slowly, legs shaky. He limped to the bed and laid his chin on the edge. Tyler smiled weakly. "You came back for me." His voice was hoarse, but filled with something soft. A tear slid down his cheek. "They said you couldn't learn, that you were worthless, but you saved my life." Shadow didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. He lifted his paw and placed it gently on Tyler's arm. And for a long moment neither moved. Just a quiet exchange between two souls who had once been abandoned, but had somehow found their way to each other. A bond had formed, not trained, not forced, earned. And as the machines continued their steady rhythm, Tyler whispered, "You're not my rescue dog, Shadow. I think I was yours." Shadow blinked slowly, tail giving a soft thump against the floor. But as peace settled in the room, a storm was gathering outside, because someone had just found out Shadow was still alive, and they weren't happy about it. The next morning, Tyler sat up in bed, sipping lukewarm coffee as Ranger lay at his feet and Shadow curled beside the chair. A nurse entered, holding a stack of documents. "These came in this morning. From your department," she said, placing them gently on the table. Tyler flipped through the pages, mostly routine reports, until one page stopped him cold. It was Shadow's file, but not the version he remembered. This one was marked "Confidential, to be destroyed," and scribbled at the bottom was a signature, "Captain Ross." Tyler's stomach turned. He scanned the details: false obedience scores, forged evaluations, doctored videos showing aggression that never happened. It wasn't just negligence. It was a cover-up. They'd tried to erase Shadow permanently. And now they knew Tyler had him. Tyler picked up his phone and dialed an old friend, Officer Melissa Tran. "I need you to check the internal archive. Search all files on Unit 17B, especially from Ross's office." "You think he framed the pup?" Melissa asked. "I don't think. I know." That night, back at the cabin, Tyler returned home with Shadow and Ranger. Everything seemed quiet. Too quiet. He checked the locks, set up a spare camera near the back porch. Then, around midnight, Shadow jolted awake, ears up, growling low. Tyler grabbed his flashlight and moved toward the door, heart pounding. The porch light flickered. Then, smash, the back window shattered. A figure burst through, wearing a black hoodie and ski mask. Tyler lunged, tackling him to the floor. Ranger barked furiously. Shadow growled, teeth bared. The intruder wrestled free and sprinted into the woods. Tyler chased him halfway down the trail before stopping, breath ragged. He picked up a small object the intruder had dropped. A stun baton, standard K9 control gear, the kind only used by facility officers. Back at the cabin, Shadow stood at the broken window, shaking, but not from fear, from rage. Tyler placed a hand on his head. "They're not just trying to cover it up anymore. They're trying to finish what they started." The truth was clearer than ever now. This wasn't just about one brave canine. It was about something bigger, something rotten, and they were willing to destroy anyone who exposed it. But Tyler wasn't backing down. Not now. Not with Shadow standing beside him. The next morning, Tyler called Melissa again. "It wasn't just a threat last night. Someone broke in. I found a K9 baton. There was a pause on the line. Tyler. I dug through the logs. Shadow wasn't just reassigned. He was officially listed as euthanized 3 weeks ago. Tyler's blood ran cold. They tried to kill him, and now they're covering their tracks. He hung up and turned to Shadow, who sat alert by the door, ears up, tail still. Tyler grabbed a duffel bag. We're leaving for a while. Somewhere they can't find you. He loaded up the truck with gear, Ranger, and Shadow. As they drove toward a friend's off-grid cabin 2 hours north, Tyler kept checking the rearview mirror. He didn't see the black SUV until it was too late. Screeching tires. A hard slam into the back of Tyler's truck. The vehicle skidded, then flipped into a ditch. Everything went black. When Tyler came to, the truck was on its side. Ranger whimpered, bleeding. But Shadow was gone. Tyler crawled out, ignoring the pain. Shadow! He yelled into the woods. No answer. Just silence. A trail of paw prints led into the brush. He followed them, heart racing, until he reached a clearing. Just in time to see Shadow, tied to a tree, whimpering as a figure raised a club. Stop! Tyler roared, tackling the man to the ground. The attacker fought back, but Tyler punched with the force of fury and love. You touch him again, I swear. Another voice shouted from behind. Drop the weapon. It was Melissa, weapon drawn, back up right behind her. They cuffed the man, another officer from the facility. Melissa turned to Tyler. They were trying to finish the job because you uncovered the truth. Tyler untied Shadow, who limped into his arms, whimpering softly. I'm here, Tyler whispered, holding him tight. I've got you. I swear. I'll never let them hurt you again. Shadow's body trembled, not in fear, but in relief. He had fought through pain, through betrayal, through cruelty. And now, finally, someone had fought for him. But justice still had a name, and it hadn't been spoken in court yet. The emergency vet clinic was quiet when they arrived. Tyler rushed in carrying Shadow in his arms, blood on his shirt, worry carved deep into his face. Ranger followed close behind, limping. The receptionist stood up. What happened? Tyler didn't waste time. Police dog. Assaulted. Head trauma. He needs help now. Minutes later, Shadow was being treated. IVs, stitches, sedation. The vet's voice was steady. He's going to need rest. He's been through more than most full-grown dogs ever should. Tyler waited in the cold white room, his hands shaking, 1,000 thoughts racing through his mind. Anger, guilt, fear, but most of all, hope. Shadow was alive. A few hours later, the vet opened the door. He's stable. He's asking for you. Tyler walked into the quiet room where Shadow lay on a small blanket, his head gently bandaged. He opened his eyes the moment he saw Tyler. You made it, buddy, Tyler whispered, kneeling down. Shadow struggled to lift his head, then let it fall softly into Tyler's hand. No bark, no sound, just trust. Unspoken, but deeper than any words. Tyler sat beside him for hours, stroking his fur. Outside, the news had started to spread. Abused police dog survives attempted cover-up. Officer exposes internal scandal. Messages flooded in. Offers of support. Donations for Shadow's recovery. Strangers from all over the country calling him a heroic rescue dog. But Tyler didn't care about the spotlight. He only cared about the soul lying beside him. He turned to the vet. When he's better, he's not going back into a cage. He's not just some working dog to them. He's family now. The vet smiled gently. He already knows that. Shadow blinked slowly. His body bruised, but his heart unbroken. Tyler knew this wasn't the end. The people who hurt Shadow had names, faces, and power. But now so did Shadow. And this time the world was watching. Back at the station, Tyler stood in front of the Internal Affairs boardroom with a flash drive in hand. His face bruised, shirt wrinkled, and eyes burning with purpose. Inside that drive were damning files Melissa had uncovered. Surveillance footage, audio logs, and an internal memo marked for immediate destruction. He entered the room without knocking. Captain Ross sat at the head of the table, arms crossed. You should be in a hospital, Briggs. Tyler threw the flash drive on the table. Play it. Ross didn't move. So Melissa stepped forward, plugged it in, and played the first recording. A grainy video appeared on screen. Ross pacing in the training yard, shouting at a caged dog. If they can't keep up, they're not worth feeding. You either perform or you disappear. Another file loaded, a recorded phone call. We need to clean this up. That Briggs guy's been poking around. And that mutt's still breathing. Silence filled the room like a storm about to break. A younger officer stood up, visibly shaken. That's your voice, sir. Ross stood, jaw tight. That's edited. You're all being emotional over a reject dog. Tyler stepped forward, voice trembling with rage. You didn't just abandon a dog. You beat him. You lied about him. And when I wouldn't look the other way, you tried to bury both of us. Ross scoffed. That mutt was useless. I was protecting the program. Melissa's voice cut through the tension. You were protecting yourself. And now you're going to face justice for it. Two internal affairs officers stepped forward. Captain Ross, you're under arrest for falsifying records, animal cruelty, and obstruction of justice. Ross didn't resist. As the handcuffs clicked, he sneered. That dog isn't a hero. He's defective. Tyler stared him down. Then how did he manage to expose you? Ross was escorted out. The boardroom sat in stunned silence. For years, Ross had ruled the K9 program with fear and control. No one had questioned him. Until now. And it wasn't just Tyler who stood against him. It was Shadow. The loyal dog they tried to erase had just brought the truth to light. But one final step remained, making sure this never happened again. And Shadow would walk into that courtroom not as a reject, but as a symbol of every soul that had ever been silenced. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the gallery. Officers lined the back wall in silent support. And there, at Tyler's side, sat Shadow, head high, service vest snug around his chest, scars still visible beneath soft fur. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Ross sat at the defense table, eyes cold, wrists cuffed. His lawyer stood, painting him as a strict commander misunderstood in his efforts to maintain excellence. But then Tyler took the stand. He didn't speak like a cop. He spoke like a man who had been changed. He was just 6 months old, Tyler said. Beaten for not learning fast enough. Locked away. Called stupid. But when I was bleeding out in the woods, he didn't hesitate. He found help. He saved my life. Tell me, does that sound like a broken dog? The courtroom was silent. Then Melissa stepped forward, submitting the final piece of evidence. Testimony from 3 former trainers who'd finally come forward. All of them had seen Ross abuse dogs, forge files, and dispose of any pup who didn't meet his impossible standards. One said, voice shaking, "We were too scared to speak, but Shadow? He endured it and still chose to protect." The defense grew desperate. It's still just a dog. That's when Tyler stood, looked to the judge, and gave a quiet signal. Shadow slowly walked to the front, stopped at the witness box, and looked right at Ross. And then, gently, Shadow did what he hadn't done in months. He lifted his head fully. No twitch. No fear. Just calm. It was more than a gesture. It was proof. Proof that resilience could outlive cruelty. Gasps filled the room. The judge turned. Captain Ross, this court finds you guilty on all charges. Cheers broke out, quickly hushed. As Ross was led away, his glare never left Shadow. But the dog didn't flinch. He stood tall beside Tyler, finally free, finally seen. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Someone asked Tyler, "What happens to Shadow now?" He smiled. "He's not going anywhere. He's my partner." Shadow sat, tail thumping once, twice. Not just a brave canine. Not just a police dog. He was a survivor. And justice had finally been served. Months passed. The scars on Shadow's body faded. But the fire in his eyes grew stronger. He walked beside Tyler on every patrol now. Not as a trainee, not as a reject, but as a full member of the unit. No leash. No commands needed. Just trust. Kids in the community knew his name. They'd run up with wide eyes and ask, "Is that the dog from the trial?" Tyler would nod, and Shadow would sit proudly, letting small hands gently stroke his fur. Ranger, now fully recovered, stayed at the cabin during shifts, waiting for them to return each night. And when they did, Shadow would curl up beside him, like a brother finally home. One afternoon, Tyler brought Shadow back to the very same training field where he was once bullied and forgotten. Only now, the field was different. At its center stood a small plaque, freshly mounted into stone, in honor of those who were never given a voice, but chose to rise anyway. Shadow sniffed the plaque. His tail moved once. Tyler knelt beside him. "They called you broken, but you became the reason this place changed." Shadow pressed his head into Tyler's shoulder, soft, strong, and certain. From abandoned dog to heroic rescue, from outcast to partner for life. He wasn't just part of the K9 unit now. He was its heart. Not every hero wears a badge. Some walk on four legs with silent courage and eyes that have seen too much, but still choose to love. Shadow was once left behind, labeled as useless, cast aside by those who never bothered to understand him. But the truth? He was never stupid. He was never broken. He just needed someone to believe. And in return, he gave everything: loyalty, bravery, and a second chance, not only to himself, but to a man who'd almost stopped believing in second chances too. This story isn't just about a brave canine. It's about the power of patience, the pain of betrayal, and the beauty of redemption. So if you've ever been overlooked, if you've ever been told you weren't enough, remember Shadow, because sometimes the ones the world throws away are the very ones who change it. If this story touched your heart, give it a like, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more emotional dog stories that remind us why we fight for the voiceless. You're not watching this alone. Thousands are watching, feeling, remembering. Tell us where you're from in the comments. And if this story made you feel something real, like it, share it, and help it reach someone who needs it. Their silence is never weakness. Just waiting for someone to finally listen.